I'm not sold on the strongest applicant pool piece. I mean, yes, you do get a lot of students who are going to be well prepared because they're
Yeah,
applying so early. But
yeah,
at the same time, I mean, how many students have we seen and worked with who have been deferred or denied at an Ivy League school in mid-December and are, just firing off applications to a whole bunch of other top-tier places. There are going to
yeah.
be plenty of other strong candidates.
I'm back with Carter DeLauro, one of our co-hosts on the Your College Bound Kid podcast, a co-director of college counseling right in New York City. Carter, we've got a doozy today. And the question is, what are the pros and cons of applying early decision? What do you think?
Well, unfortunately, in some ways, the pros are massive. The pros of applying early decision, I think the two big ones are that you encounter significantly friendlier admit rates in many cases, right? The average benefit to applying early decision is a 3x increase in the overall admit rate from regular decision, and several schools go so much higher than that, 7, 8 times. If you think about it, they are looking to lock up a certain number of students in early decision in order to make their projections and models more effective. And so you don't have to be in the top 5% or 9% or whatever it is of the whole applicant pool. You just have to be in the top, 500 kids that apply in early decision or whatever their target number is for early decision. So the competition ultimately is less in early decision in most cases than it is in regular decision or early action. And so, from a strategic standpoint, that can be such a significant driver. And the other really big pro to this is that the process is done sooner. And I work with so many students who, by the time they get to May or April, have been through so many emotions in this process that they're totally wiped out. And I've been getting more and more students in the junior year outwardly saying, I just want to be done with this. I want this to be quick as a process. And so that is one of the other benefits to applying early decision. In the last few years, we've had more schools that will include incentives for early decision applicants, like priority housing registration or something like that. To me, those are ancillary pros in early decision. The real driver for me when I'm talking to students is the friendlier odds of admission that you tend to find in early decision. When you get to the cons, the big con to me is money, right? Like particularly for middle income students, you can't compare packages, right? If you're a high income student, then perhaps you don't need to compare packages. If you're a low income student, applying to a school that is going to meet full need, you can trust that you're going to get a fairly good financial aid package in most cases. If they don't apply, or if you don't get a great financial aid package as a full need or high need student, you can back out of the early decision commitment after what we would say is a good faith attempt at reconciling a workable financial aid package. A lot of middle income students are stuck in this space where, being able to compare need-based packages, being able to compare merit scholarships can be really good. And I work with more and more students all the time who are hesitant to apply somewhere early decision because of their family's financial situation. And that can be really hard to give up this incredible advantage in your odds that I think early decision gives because it may not be worth the potentially tens of thousands of dollars over multiple years of college that you could be foregoing if you were to do a more extensive process. And I would say that the other con, I think, is looking at what might be developmentally appropriate. I think my first appearance as a guest or co-host on
Mhm.
the podcast was talking about the ways that early decision can really be detrimental to students' just growth and development as adolescents. They often need more time to consider who they are and what they're looking for, and plenty of students change their minds over the course of the process. You may also see students who are hoping to increase their grades in the this fall of senior year. And I used to advise students to hold off on early decision one when they were strengthening their academic profile. But I think that at this point, benefit of the admit rate in early decision outweighs a lot of those other pieces if you can afford it. And if your goal is if you have a particular college in mind that might be in that reach or unlikely category for you. What do you think,
Yeah, I
Mark?
think you hit the main things. I like to give an example of the last point you were making. You're talking about developmentally appropriate and all of that. I have a real tangible example that I can use for this. So, in the company that I started, School Match for You, most years, not every year, but most years, this is a scenario that we have. Someone applies early decision and they get deferred. Now, if you get deferred, and we'll do other videos on this, but just know that the school's postponing their decision on you till later. But if you get deferred, it's no longer binding. So this is the scenario that happens. Somebody gets deferred and then they get in the regular round, they're admitted, and they choose not to go to the early decision school. So this is proof. So what this means is from November to May, which is a really significant amount of time in a senior year. And really it's more than November 1, right? Because if you're applying to a decision, you're really making this decision probably September, October, early October maybe. Between then and when you need to decide, you learn a lot more about yourself and about other schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to Rick Clark right here at Georgia Tech, and this is one reason why he's so against early decision is, I just see, I just don't believe most people can make that decision at that age, and it would be ultimately the best decision for them. Now, certainly our families that can do it because you start earlier, you plan earlier, you get due visits earlier, you get that assurance early. I'm not saying it can't be done. My own daughters, one did early decision, one didn't. So I've seen both sides to it. So that's definitely something that I think needs to be underscored more as a con. A lot of people honestly would make a different decision. Carter did a fantastic job of explicating the money piece. You can be leaving a tremendous amount of money on the table, because schools are really getting aggressive with their money these days. And a school might throw $45,000 of merit at you. A school might throw full tuition at you that you don't qualify for any need base and you got to pay full. Like this can be a lot of money. So this is definitely a factor to think about. When you think of the pros and cons. One other pro is, and I saw this with my own daughter who applied ED to Davidson. Besides, there's the peace of mind if you know by December 15th, where you're going, like making the senior year so much more enjoyable. But you also do have an ability to get integrated into that life of the school. You can start building all kinds of relationships with
That's true.
incoming students and professors and getting to know the area and clubs. And you can really do a lot to sort of aid your transition to the school by getting a 6-month jump on knowing where you're going. So that would be a pro. The only thing that I would say, and I really want to make sure that I don't undermine Carter's point about the advantage because he was spot on. Like it is a decisive advantage. And we see students all the time for whom applying ED, we know like, wow, it's a good thing you applied ED because we'll see stronger kids that don't get in the regular round. So there's no question about that. But I do think it's hard to quantify it in numbers. And I'm going to use an example. I was interviewing Lee Coffin, who's over Dartmouth's office. And at the time, the numbers showed, this is about 5 years ago now, it showed Dartmouth having a 28% admit rate early decision and a 4% in regular. So the way I phrased the question to him was, Lee, I mean, I know he just see, early decision advantage, but at the time, according to the charts, Dartmouth looked like they gave the biggest advantage, a 7-1, and he had a great answer for me. He was like, we're 24% smaller than every other Ivy, and we have the same number of sports teams. So if we were to pull out the recruited athletes, it's really 12%, not 28. So it's more like a 12-4. And then you have to realize a lot of schools will say they see their strongest applicants in early. They will see a lot of, that is where a lot of double up donors, a lot of those applicants are there, and just the enthusiasts that come in enthusiastic for the school. So, well, it's a super decisive advantage. It's really, really hard to kind of unpack exactly how much that advantage is because recruited athletes, donors, committed double alums tend to be in there. And in some cases, it is the strongest applicant pool.
I'm not sold on the strongest applicant pool piece. I mean, yes, you do get a lot of students who are going to be well prepared because they're applying so early. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I mean, how many students have we seen and worked with who have been deferred or denied at an Ivy League school in mid-December and are, just firing off applications to a whole bunch of other top-tier places. There are going to
Yeah.
be plenty of other strong candidates in early, but I really do resonate with, or sorry, in regular, but I really do resonate with what Lee from Dartmouth said about the institutional priorities that are being filled
Yeah.
in early decision. I do think Dartmouth is a particular case being smaller like
Sure.
that,
Sure.
but I also would kind of call on colleges to be more transparent about this. Publish the
Yeah.
rates of the unhooked kids in early decision if you're going to claim that that's the case. Give students and families the information that will help them decide. Ultimately, I do want to
Mm-hmm.
emphasize
Mm-hmm.
that I really feel like in an ideal world, early decision would be outlawed. Like, I just
Mm-hmm.
think early decision is so bad for students and families,
Mm-hmm.
as not developmentally appropriate. It
Mm-hmm.
it it forces students to apply game theory to their
Mm-hmm.
college application process
Yeah.
in ways that are not that I think really do damage ultimately to colleges and the colleges' reputations and perception in society. And at the
Let alone
very
the
least,
stress too, the stress, like the mental
yeah.
health stress and toil that they can add to the process, which is something you're so good at articulating and always making us mindful of, you know.
Well, yeah, yeah, and even if the stress that they're causing other students and families is not enough to motivate them, I think that they are undermining their own academic missions by having this sort of by gamifying their admission process the way that early decision makes happen. And so I think in addition to the stress, there is a sort of self-interest that they should be thinking about in the long run here. But if you're going to have early decision, be transparent about it. Like, help students understand how to use it. I really do feel like it's so massive for students that the difference between finishing in December and finishing in April is such a big deal. I think, for a student's lived experience of 12th grade, and I think that there's just so much additional stress that could be avoided if kids had more information about how to use how to think about early decision in a way that could align their strategy with their own internal values and development.
I'll say two things, and this has been a great conversation, Carter. I appreciate you pushing back on is the pool stronger, because there's no doubt there's a lot of strategists that go in there too, and like they have the resources, and so I'm going to take a shot at a school and use my early decision bump to maybe apply to a school that I know I wouldn't have a shot at ED. And so you might make the case maybe they're not stronger. I base that just on what admission officers have told me over the years. Like they come in, but how much of that is choreographed and calculated because a certain kind of family's been putting all the ducks in order
Mhm.
versus that's just a standout kid? And some of that maybe they're mixing in their enthusiasm for us, their ability to take months and really put together a really good application. Like, it's really sort of hard to unpack. Is the kid stronger? You did admissions, you saw stuff with Pomona, Oxy. You'd be in a good position to say whether you thought that kid was overall, that pool was stronger or not. But the biggest thing I really want to close and emphasize is a couple of things. Carter's point is so real about, like, if money's important for you, you not only are you likely leaving a lot of money on the table, but if you apply well, you can do well without early decision. Like, Carter and I navigate so many people through this process who they just can't. I can't pay 90 or $100,000. I just can't. I know the forms say I'm not going to get any need-based financial aid, but that, I can't do it. Like, I don't know how in the world they think my SAI, which is your student aid index, is like 125,000. I don't know how in the world I got to think about another kid. We live in a higher cost area. My kids want to go to med school, law school, professional school. There's just no way. It's an irresponsible decision. And a lot of times, if you're in a school context where a lot of people are applying their decision, that is tremendous pressure that people can feel. And I'm here to tell you that process works out well for somebody who has a really good list. It works out really, really well. Now, understand, working out well may mean, okay, guess what? You're probably not getting in Penn and regular. You're probably
Penn's
not
the
getting,
example I was thinking of.
yes, you're probably not getting in there now. But at the end of the day, you're in some incredible schools where you can have a great college experience that prepare you really well for life, and you're going to be really happy with what you have to pay. And that tremendous savings can be, there's an opportunity cost that can be applied to so many other aspects of enrichment for either you in education or your parents, maybe so they can not be working at 72, because they don't, they can take care of their retirement, which should be a legitimate concern. No student should want their parents to have to be slaving away because they spent all this extra money. And normally what they do for one kid, they probably want to do for another. So just don't, like, I'm here to give you permission that you do not have to apply early decision to end up with great college outcomes and to be able to find colleges that are at a comfort level for your finances. But do understand everything Carter said was very real about the ED advantage, especially the ED1 advantage. And that might mean you setting your sights on a few different schools realistically. Doesn't mean you might not take a shot at a few, but guard your heart because they may be much more unlikely to happen, because the ED advantage is absolutely real from the standpoint of increasing your chances at very selective schools that offer it. So both of those things can be true at the same time. And I think it's important to underscore that, because if you're coming from a private school or an affluent suburb where so many of the kids are applying ED, that could be a lot of pressure. And the person who feels like they can't do it over money, they can be sometimes really downcast, like, wow, I lost my shot now. I don't think the college process is going to go well for me. And that's absolutely not true. Every year we see kids that don't apply ED apply well and get fantastic outcomes. And I know
Absolutely.
Carter agrees with me, but the applying well is extremely important, and it's really helpful if somebody who's knowledgeable is guiding you through this process, because there's a lot of competition out there, much more so than people realize, and people have a tendency to think they're a stronger applicant in the context of the pool than they are, just being blunt. And so that applying well part is a very important component of what I'm saying. And I know Carter knows this stuff so much well. I don't even ask him.
Yep, that's right.
Thanks, Carter. Appreciate you.
You bet. Take care.